Welcome to our show. This podcast is devoted to the history, installation, and best practices of fluid-applied reinforced roofing. I'm your host, Chris Ford, and this is 50 years of commercial roof restorations. Okay, so today we're going to be focusing on the best practices when focused on production with a pump. We're lucky enough to have Tim here with us today, who's been doing this for well over 30 years. How long have you been doing this?
Since 1981.
Yeah, so I don't want to do the math associated, but that's a long time in this industry. You were basically here when it first started for the most part, right?
Yeah, I was on the forefront of fluid applied systems going down. It was something totally new to me at that time. I had no idea, never seen coatings before in my life.
Well, and I know that you were heavily involved in some of the evolution of the systems and what they've turned into now today. So over years, I mean, we're going to rely on you. What we want to do is focus on, again, like I said, some of the best practices. You know, we want to maximize efficiency, want to maximize cleanliness. We want to get in a job, out a job, do it as cleanly and quickly as possible while still putting on a high quality roof system, obviously. So just tell me, can you kind of paint a picture of what like the setup might look like? You know, when you're down on the ground, where the material's located, and this is kind of going to be your area to work from. Can you kind of paint a picture of what that might look like?
Sure. Pretty much no matter what you're using, being a tanker, a tote, or a drum, your setup area is going to be pretty much the same. You want to protect the ground. So tarps, visqueen, lay something out so that you can set your equipment, your pump, drums, totes on that plastic. If you're using a tanker, you take your plastic right up to under the valve on the tanker. Thing you want to do is make sure that you have a water hose. It can become your best friend if something happens. So not only have it, but have it hooked up and ready to go. So that's my top tip, because things just happen on a job site from time to time. And it's a whole lot easier to take care of a problem if you have that hose set up and ready to go than if you decide, oh, where's my hose? Where do I hook it up? After the fact of a spill of some sort. I would like to see more guys protect their setup area with fencing if possible. If not, maybe some delineators, traffic cones, and some caution tape. Especially where your location may be. So let's say you're at a factory of some sort, a warehouse where there is no real traffic. You're okay with whatever you choose probably in that instance. But if you get into, say, a retail shopping center or strip mall where you have a lot more flow of people, cars, you really want to protect your setup area and kind of keep people from coming into your area. Just from a liability standpoint, it's big. Somebody gets hurt, you just don't want no part of that. So anything you can do. So the way I set up my jobs, and they were all set up the same, was fencing, a storage box, and a toilet. And then everything's inside of fencing. And you got your own little setup area, and somebody has to really try to gain access to your area. So guys, one other thing I think is important is some signage. Have a couple signs made up that for whatever your particular company name is, and that access only to that company. The other place I put signage in and did a couple things was on my ladders. Again, this goes to wherever you're working. But if you're in an area where there's a lot of people around, that signage is important. Just letting people know that nobody else can use that ladder. It's for authorized use of company X only. So I think that's really important.
And I imagine you don't probably have a whole bunch of like just kids trying to rent, but you're talking about HVAC guys or anyone else is like, oh, there's a ladder already set up, I'll just use that one.
Yeah, you say that with the kids, but no, I've seen it. Yeah. So, company working at a big apartment complex, and I saw it. Kids trying to climb the ladder. And I grabbed the foreman and I said, hey guys, this is a problem.
Yeah.
One of these little kids gets hurt on your ladder. I don't want to be a part of it, I'll tell you that, because it's just going to end up costing somebody a lot of money. So it's important. We just live in a different world, and you really got to protect yourself for any and everything out there today.
With going back to the setup for the, say, the pump, and like, you know, you're going to pull off with the transfer hose off the bottom, kind of paint a picture of you know, take us from when I open that valve, what's that product going to do? Where's it going to go?
So what we're going to do is we have what we call a transfer hose, and we're going to transfer from whatever container we're using, it being a tanker, a tote, or a drum, to our pump. And for us, we like a 2-inch transfer hose, and then we can hook up to a tanker with a 3-inch cam lock adapter. The totes are already set up at 2-inch cam lock, and then if we were going to use a drum, we'd use a 2-inch stinger. So that 2-inch by 10 to 12 foot transfer hose is what you're going to use no matter what container you're using to get our materials, be it emulsion, acrylic, or any other product. My best recommendation is a completely different setup for emulsions or coatings, acrylics. Now, you don't need it for different colors or anything like that, or primer, acrylic. That can all be the same 2-inch transfer hose. And emulsion is a separate setup. Don't mix the two. It's just going to create problems for you. So you're just better off having 2 individual setups. We'll get into more of hose, PSI, and all that kind of stuff at a different time. So you hook up to your tanker, you hook up to your pump. Then one of the next things you're going to want to do is crack the lid on the tanker. You have to vent it. Very, very important that you vent that tanker to prevent from a vacuum effect of just drawing all the product, all the air. You will start to bend the tanker.
I always get a sideways look when I say that, and I think when you look at a 5,000 gallon tanker, and you know, I tell them to vent it, and then they look at me kind of sideways like, how important can that be? I don't think people believe that a tank can crush, but you and I both know it absolutely can crush.
We've seen it. We've seen it happen. The same thing with your tote. You got to vent it too. The drum's pretty much going to be vented, so that's a different little scenario. Very important. You crack that lid. Now you're ready to open your tank. So most of our tanks have what's called a butterfly valve. It's a real fast. Just lift up a little lever on the bottom of the handle and turn it, and it's open. At that point, you're pretty much set up and ready to go from the pump side.
So just to recap, so I'm picturing this. I've laid out tarp. I've extended it beyond where I'm going to hook up to the bottom nipple of the tanker. I got myself a nice big working area. I know some guys will even take like 2x4s and roll it up, make like a little 1.5-inch swimming pool just in case there's a spill of some sort. Now it's all caught.
I mean that's not a bad idea. Yeah, that's something like that. Just preventative, so that you're trapping the amount it can flow. That's a good idea. So yeah, for sure.
So I got that tarp all laid out. I got my pump on there. My hose is all hooked up. And then that's going to run up the wall. I assume that's where the visqueen comes in, just to protect that wall.
Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, there's a couple of things. Protect the wall. Drop a tarp down the wall. Your ladder can go there. Your hose goes up there. And anytime you're pulling anything up or letting anything down, you're not going to get marks all over the side of the building.
And then just use some large C-clamps to go over the parapet and kind of hold it in place.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure guys have got a lot of things, anything to tie off your hose to. I mean, it can even be the ladder, and then you put like a C-clamp. Now it's tight to the wall. Now your hose can tie to that as well. So just something to protect it. That's the other thing you got to do too is on the ground at your pump, your hose, you want to secure your pump, we call it, because there's a lot of vibration with, and these pumps we're talking about for us are Gracos. Typically it's a 733 or an 833. That is 95% of pumps that are used putting down our products. So with that vibration, that pump can move. And there's also a pulsation as the product is being pumped. And that pump can move. So it's just chalk the tires. Put a couple of, I always use pipe wrenches because I'm using pipe wrenches to put my hoses together. So I put a pipe wrench behind and in front of a tire. And that'll just stop it from walking.
And then I know keeping slack in the line is important too, right at the pump for exactly what you're talking about. So that pump can kind of shimmy around a little bit, especially if it's on like an angle, on a driveway or something. And throughout the day as you're working, it just kind of slowly, quarter inch at a time slides away. And so by securing it, you can even use ties, chuck the wheels, but putting some slack in the line, all the lines really, but definitely the one that goes up to the roof. Because if you snap a line and the pump's still running, it's not going to slow down. If anything, it's going to speed up. So now you're on the roof, and not having a.
That's exactly what will happen. Is that pump will move until it's pulled the hose just as tight as it can be, and now you're just putting a whole lot of pressure on those fittings, because that's what's holding it at that point, is those fittings. And
you secure everything, and up on the roof you're going to be moving around, and that hose is going to slide back and forth as you're working and stuff, and that's perfectly fine. But down on the ground we want everything to basically stay in the position where we left it. I'm curious, so you travel a lot, have been doing this for a long time. If you haven't worked with hundreds of contractors, you've certainly worked with dozens, right? And so and then you have different crews.
Hundreds.
So you have different crews. What's some of the most common thing, like the skip step here? When you go to we're talking about the ideal way to set up a job site. A tarp on the ground, protect the wall, run what we've talked about, running your hydraulic hose through either like some French drain or a fire hose, all those things. That would be ideal, right? And what's some of the things you see the most frequently forgotten or skipped?
Just protecting the ground, number one, for sure. They don't put down tarps or visqueen, just rolls of plastic, spread it out, just protecting that area. It's pretty inexpensive. Depending on your setup location on your job site, it can end up costing you a lot of money to try and clean that area. If you're on blacktop, it's not quite as bad because it's going to dry black.
Yeah.
But if you're on concrete, now you've made a big mess. Now you're going to pressure washer and some wire brushes trying to clean stuff up. So
that's where that water hose comes back in.
Yeah, again, you can just wash stuff away real quick. Because, again, stuff happens. So it's being prepared for the unexpected. That will save you a lot of headache and money.
I've been a part of some cleanups, and I've said this before, there hasn't been a single repair or cleanup that I've done where I didn't think while I was doing it, man, I wish I would have just put some plastic. I wish I would have just thought ahead and protected it. I think what happens is guys get in such a hurry to start putting down squares, start putting on roof, that and sometimes there's even pressure, to hey, get going. I want to visibly see, and a lot of times that pressure comes from someone who has no idea what even goes into roofing.
Yeah.
But it's important to know I got to do step 2 before I can move on to step 3, sir. And let's put some plastic down. Let's protect our area. Let's set it up right. So then we don't have to come clean up a mess.
Yeah, it's in your long-term interest to have a set of rules that you follow every time you set up a job site. It's just in your interest to protect that area, again, for the unexpected. The little bit of time and money it takes to do what we're talking about is nothing. Maybe nothing happens. Maybe you get lucky and everybody did everything perfect. But that's not a real world, guys. Somebody forgets something happens, and then it's too late if you didn't have that set up. So
yeah, and these things don't expire; they don't go bad. Once you've set up your tarp, you just roll it up and it goes to the next job. Once you have all these things in place, maybe the plastic down the wall you throw in the trash. Maybe a couple things are disposable along the way, but the buckets that you used, things like that. Okay, maybe you don't reuse some of that stuff, but a lot of it is just from job to job to job. You might keep the same stuff for 2-3 years and just bring it from job to job.
Yeah, as long as you haven't had any big spills or anything, yeah. Like you said, you roll it up, you fold it up, take it to the next one. So it's just precaution. Just being extra careful. And again, all these things, look at your job site setup area. Just choosing that setup area. Sometimes you're limited. Company says, here, this is what you get right here. So now you got to deal with that. But if you get the choice, pick an area that's out of the way so that you just don't have people or cars or trucks, anything in your way.
Man, this is all invaluable stuff, Tim, and I know, you're available. I know how passionate you are about this. You and I both, man. We want to see everyone be successful that we work with. We want to provide the information that we have. A lot of people are just starting out.
Yeah.
A lot of things. You've learned this stuff. You've known this stuff from doing it for 40 years.
I'll tell you. Let me interject here, Chris. I learned a lot of it the hard way, guys.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of things happen. A lot. I mean, I've had guys open valves on a 5,000 gallon tanker. Product is just flowing out. I've had a guy take the transfer hose off without closing the valve. Again, product is just flowing out on the ground. I've seen where 3,500 gallon tank of acrylic coating between the foreman backing the truck driver up. I'm not exactly sure what they did, but somehow they managed to snap the valve off the tanker, and 3,500 gallons of acrylic coating are now on the ground. So I've seen it all. I've seen ruptured hoses, a lot of experience of seeing things happen. Guys didn't take the precaution in those instances where they could have prevented. Every one of those were preventable. They just didn't do the right thing.
Well, I want to say thanks, man, and I want to thank the people who are listening. Please understand this is coming from the best possible place. Like I said, we will want to be there for you. We want to help. Anything we can do to shorten your learning curve. Anything that we can do to speed up the process so that you can become maximum efficiency as quickly as possible. That's what we want to do here at Western Colloid. Thank you for listening today. Thank you, Tim, for joining us today. For more information, you can always visit us at westerncolloid.com, and please subscribe to our channel. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.